All right, what's going on, folks? Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another episode of the Bordello. It was a big week in the Italian Republic for a couple reasons. World Cup qualifying began on a horrible foot. We shed Luciano Spalletti, which might be good news, but we shed him because things got off to a horrible foot, and we're finally starting to walk back the horrible regime that was the Spalletti regime, which probably a year ago should have been dealt with. We did not. We're feeling the ramifications of it now. And we're in real trouble now. We, the Italian national team, are in a really horrible spot right now if we're to qualify for the World Cup. But by God, the team that fails to qualify, if it does fail to qualify, one thing is for sure, is going to be Italian. It's going to be made up of guys with names like Gianluigi and Riccardo and Francesco. Because a huge election took place on the week, Italians voted emphatically against having the amount of time from 10 years to 5 years that a foreign resident must be in Italy before applying for citizenship. The Italian people said, no, we do not want that. We refuse unequivocally to allow that sort of thing to happen, because if there's one thing that we want, it's that we stay Italian and that we go down as an Italian national team, as Italians. If we're going to go down and we're going to fail, we're going to at least do it with guys that look like us. That's what matters to the Italian people. That's what matters to the Italian masses. We're going to get into it today. Are they right? Are they wrong? Well, you see, that depends whether you like to win. That's really what it comes down to, is if you like to win, okay, maybe, consider alternatives to what has not been working, right? You have to consider, we haven't qualified for a World Cup in 12 years. Over the last 12 years, a lot of people could have become naturalized. But the laws are what they are, and we voted to keep it that way. The people have spoken. We've made our bed. We're going to have to sleep in it, for better or for worse. In the words of former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, after he lost what he deemed to be the most important referendum of his political career, at which point he resigned, much like Luciano Spalletti did the other day. Even though he was technically fired on paper, but he basically announced it himself and said he was going to be foregoing his severance pay. So it's basically a resignation. In the words of Matteo Renzi, which we say anytime things look a little dire, but hopeful, because of the fact that we're still clinging to our Italian identity before all else. Long live Italy. Long live the Republic, and good luck to us all. Viva l'Italia, e in bocca al lupo a tutti noi. I'm Sam Adamo, and this is the Bordello. Here in my possession, I have some documents which were sent to me by the Italian government. Let's pull these up here. These are ballots. These are ballots which were mailed to me by the Italian consulate in Montreal. I was informed that over the past couple of days, I was to mail them back after having completed them and answered, as my civic duty says I should, yes or no, to 5 key questions. The referendum was put forward by one of the largest trade unions in Italy. Now, I'm not 100% familiar with what kind of support or backing you need to get in order to put issues to a referendum, but this trade union did that. 4 of the issues had to do with workers' rights. For example, let's pull one up here. They're all in different colors. It's kind of cool. Looks like Monopoly money, or it looks like in Squid Game. You know, before they all got their heads shot off, that game they would play in the subway where they would throw down these kind of paper folded in origami type squares. Well, that's what these look like in many assorted colors. Why don't we pull one up here and read what it says? Now, again, this is for the referendum popolare dell'8 giugno al 9 giugno 2025. The popular referendum, the national referendum, held from the 8th to the 9th of June 2025. Let's go. We have 5 different issues being tabled here by Italy's largest trade union. We're not going to go through all of them, but let's read off one, for example, here, just to kind of indicate what it is we're looking at. This first one, voting yes or no on whether to amend or modify the terms of il contratto di lavoro a tutte le crescenti, disciplina dei licenziamenti illegittimi, abrogazione. I actually have a background in labor relations. So this is something that I should kind of, take great interest in. Arguably, my opinion on this is an informed one. Any of these issues that I would vote on, as an Italian citizen abroad who cares about the civic process, whichever way I go with it, ideally would be kind of an informed decision, something that I kind of hold close to my heart, right? Whether I think that workers' rights are important or not. So in this case, they're talking about, I don't know, contratto di lavoro a tutte le crescenti. I don't know, something about like just illegitimate termination. The regular shit that unions care about. Fine, all right, that's one. That's one of them. Let's throw this to the ground. And you might be asking, by the way, well, this episode is coming out on the 11th of June, on a Wednesday. The election was on the 8th to the 9th. What are you doing? Keeping all the ballots in your possession. What's that all about? We're going to get to that. Number 2, esclusione della responsabilità solidale del committente. This is too fucking long. Dell'apprenditore per infortuni subiti al lavoratore. Something about getting injured on the job site. All right, fine. Union. No problem. Another couple of similar articles tabled having to do with workers' rights and whether or not the people should vote in favor of granting workers, I don't know, fucking better conditions under certain circumstances. But then we get to the big one here. What is this? Where is this one coming from? Why don't we read this one out? Now, you could not speak Italian, and I think you'll immediately understand. I'll go real slow on this, and I'll translate if need be. But even if you don't have a full proficiency in the Italian language, I think you'll actually have a pretty easy time understanding what it is we're talking about here. I'm going to read this very slowly. This ballot is to do with a clause on la cittadinanza italiana, dimezzamento da 10 a 5 anni dei tempi di residenza legale in Italia dello straniera maggiorenne extracomunitario per la richiesta di concessione della cittadinanza italiana. This one is to do with Italian citizenship. Interesting. They are proposing, one of Italy's largest trade unions is proposing that the amount of time, the number of years required to be living as a legal resident above the age of 18 in the Italian Republic from 10 years to 5 years. They are proposing that the number of years you need to have lived in the country in order to apply for Italian citizenship be slashed from 10 to 5 years in order to become an Italian citizen, i.e., let's make it easier on people to become Italian citizens. 5 years, I mean, if I get a 5-year jail sentence, I'm cruising through that. I don't know about you. I mean, a 5-year jail sentence, not a problem. I think I'm coming out of that reformed. It's been 5 years since COVID. That doesn't feel that long ago, right? A 5-year jail sentence, I could walk through that. That's a cakewalk, no problem. I'm not getting assaulted over 5 years. 25 years, whatever. I might flip. 5 years, what is that? That's nothing. I'll come out a stronger man. So living 5 years in Italy, right? Living 5 years in Italy, eating good fucking whole grain wheat and stuff. No bloating after eating pasta. I mean, it's fucking paradise. Is that hard? Is that a long time? Arguably, it's not. You could argue that it's a pretty easy time. 5 years, you chill in Italy, bang, you're an Italian citizen. So I said, well, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about that. This is the envelope that I was supposed to mail in the ballots. It is, at the time of recording, the 11th of June. This will be coming out shortly thereafter. This episode will come out shortly after recording. And I have not mailed any of these in. I'm going to tear that up right there on screen. Now, there's a couple of key reasons why I did not vote. Because I am, I know what you're thinking. Well, how could you, if this is an issue that you hold so dear to your heart, how the hell could you possibly abstain from voting? Should you not have voted no? Well, you see, this is Italy. This is Italy, and we have, to be fair, I don't actually know if this is uncommon in other countries. But there's a threshold. You need to have at least 50% of the votership participate in the election in order for it to be valid and to get ratified. So, I said, well, how about no? How about I don't participate? Why even leave it a chance at this point? And many other people in Italy had a very similar thinking to me. This via the BBC. Italian citizenship referendum void after low turnout. A referendum in Italy on easing citizenship rules and enhancing workers' rights has been declared invalid. Around 30% of voters participated, well short of the 50% threshold required to make the vote binding in the poll, which began Sunday and ran until Monday at 3 p.m. The ballot featured 5 questions covering different issues, including a proposal to halve the length of time an individual has to live in Italy before they can apply for citizenship from 10 years to 5 years. The referendum was initiated by a citizens' initiative and supported by civil society groups and trade unions, all of whom campaigned for a yes vote. For them, the outcome, which saw turnout levels as low as 22% in regions like Sicily and Calabria, will come as a blow. I love uneducated Southern Italians who give not a shit to participate in the civic process. At times like this, it's very helpful, actually, to have a low literacy rate in places like that. Reaching the 50% threshold was always going to be a struggle, not least because the Italian government, led by hard-right Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, largely ignored the referendum or actively discouraged people from voting. Whether just above 30% or just below 30%, this is a low figure, below the expectations and targets set by the promoters. Lorenzo Pregliasco, the founder of political polling company Utrend, told Italy's Sky TG24. Last week, Meloni announced that she would boycott the vote, declaring Italy's existing citizenship law as excellent and very open. She visited a polling station in Rome on Sunday, but did not cast a vote. But activists argued that a 10-year wait to apply for citizenship was far too long, and that reducing the requirements to 5 years would bring Italy in line with many of its European neighbors. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. That's why only 30% of the people turned out. That's why 70% of the voters didn't come out. It's because they don't want it to be like our European counterparts. I mean, if PSG won the Champions League and the whole city burned, and the image that was propagated was of, let's just say, people that might not have been there at the time of the French Revolution in the 1700s. You understand? Or the 1800s, whenever it fucking was. I don't know. I'm an idiot, right? So don't take anything I say. I can't even say idiot. I just say, I'm an idiot. So, what the hell do I know? But let me tell you something. I don't think it's bad to have this worldview. I don't think it's necessarily abnormal to want the country of, my origin to kind of stay true to its roots. And here's why. Here's why it's important to me, right? Because you could argue, by the way, I went to an event the other day at Cabana Pool Bar in Toronto, where I went around interviewing a bunch of, I don't even know where to start. I mean, a bunch of drunk, barely proficient in the English language Italian kids. These are grandkids of Italian immigrants who have been in Canada for a couple generations now, and they know very little about Italy or the language or whatever the case may be. But one thing that I noticed was it seemed very important to these people that their grandparents' homeland, their grandparents who left a country which, by the way, they left without really having much more than a probably cursory understanding of the history of, or fucking even the language of, in the case of a lot of them, right? It's not like a lot of these people who immigrated to, the Western world were reading Dante. And that gets passed down, by the way. You have illiterate people that migrate and their kids are not necessarily all that well versed on the issues abroad. But one thing that they all had in common was they all said that they were proud to be Italian and that they wanted Italy to remain Italian. I asked a lot of them, do you know about who Giorgia Meloni is? Do you know who I asked them all, by the way, pretty much. I went around conducting like a street interview style thing. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. I kind of lost my soul doing it. It's one of those things that, everyone does on the internet that kind of sucks. We're trying to do it in a way that's a little more tasteful as we try to kind of put out a new sort of breadth of content. But I asked everybody there basically, who's your favorite Italian brain rot character from TikTok? And everyone had an answer. It was Bombardillo Crocodilo. Then I would say, great, who's the Italian prime minister? And a lot of people would say, buddy, what do I look like? I don't fucking know. But the handful of people that did all said shit to the effect of, I'm Calabrese, bro, and bro, we got to get these migrants out of Italy. Now I'm not saying that. That's what these people said. I didn't say we got to get the migrants out of Italy. I'm just saying that perhaps maybe making it a little more challenging for people to, thank you. This is topical. I was just brought a plate of salumi. We'll get to the football in a little bit. Thank you, Paola. Paola is my woman. She's an Italian citizen, and we're gonna go to the consulate in a couple of days because we're gonna apply for. First of all, my middle name is wrong at the Italian consulate, so I'm currently embarking on a challenge. I want to see if it takes over under 19 and a half years to get my name changed in the Italian government's database. That'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun, and we need to register her to vote. She was very upset that I got these ballots, and I didn't even cast a fucking vote. It really upset her. She's like, "What are you doing? Not participating in the civic process? I'm not even allowed to. I'm a proud WAP, and I'm not even allowed to, not even being sent the paperwork." But in this case, that's good. The fewer people vote, the better, because we must firmly reject any such buffoonery from trade unions with an agenda. How this has to do? Listen, what citizenship rights in Italy have to do with voters' rights is beyond me. I think, obviously it's all kind of coming from naturally from a left-wing kind of worldview, right? All these people that are kind of, lobbying for every one of these issues to get voted into law are all left-leaning, right? So I think they kind of just try to just toss another, they tried to toss another matter that was important to them into the equation, right? They threw it into the soup. In the hope that maybe they could kind of achieve an outcome that was in line with their overall worldview. But in any event, so yeah, we got to go to the consulate in a couple days. I got to change my name. We got to apply for codici fiscali, social insurance numbers. In most other countries, you see it's cool to be off the grid, but in Italy, because I'm so. This is the best part about living outside of a country that you have an affinity to. Is you don't have to deal with all the bullshit. You could just romanticize it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm just romanticizing it, saying, no, I don't live in Italy, but for me, it's very important that Italy stays Italian. It's great. I don't have to deal with the bullshit there. I love how trade unions are probably like, listen, we have no fucking, we have a workforce that's like depleted right now. We need to increase how many, numbers we get, how many numbers of people we get into the fucking workforce here. Let's try to incentivize people to come to Italy and become citizens so that we could, maybe have higher rates of production. And I'm just like, nope, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck the economy. What matters to me is that when I go back to visit in August for 1 month a year, it just feels familiar and I have people that look like me. That's my, core issue. Look, here's the thing, right? We're talking about the European neighbors that we don't want to be like, right? Because again, activists are saying that bringing the wait time from 10 years to 5 years will be more in line with what is customary nowadays. And we're saying, well, no, we as Italians, by the way, en masse, to the tune of over 70% of the population, have completely rejected that and said, no, fuck that. It's not what we want. Now, if you do look at France and you do look at Belgium and you do look at Portugal, you do look at Spain, they have better football clubs than us right now. Rather, not clubs. They have better national teams than us right now. They have much better football teams than we do at the moment. It's not even close. Now, Lamine Yamal, 17 years old, 2 immigrant parents. So we have to be aware of what we're foregoing. What we're foregoing here is the possibility of having a competitive football team, in spite of the gross mismanagement of the bozos and the monkeys that run the organization, okay? Because make no mistake, Gabriele Gravina, the president of the FIGC, is a baboon. He's making decisions. He's making decisions in like a weird animalistic way. He's not sitting down analyzing them. He's using a monkey brain. He's using an animal brain. He's using the id. He's not thinking, strategically at all. He's going off of, I don't know, whether I like a guy or not. Like Luciano Spalletti was kept on probably because they, had fostered a relationship and enjoyed each other's demeanor, disposition. They kind of got on and had a decent working relationship. That's something that they both talked about extensively. You got to be analytical. And when you bomb out of the Euro with a team that has no identity, you got to say, we got to get this guy the fuck out of here. Because again, if you're the president of an organization, you have to be aware of who your subordinates are, who the people that you kind of work for are. So if we're talking about the players of the national team being the guys that Gravina has to kind of help out, put in the best position to succeed possible, you have to be aware of who they are, what they are. He's so fucking old. He has no clue what young people are even like nowadays. Young people don't respond well to a guy like Luciano Spalletti, okay, coming in and philosophizing and saying, you must take your destiny into your own hands. It doesn't work. So it's been proven to not work, and he should have been gotten rid of a year ago, probably on paper. You know, the results weren't there, but furthermore, just hearing the guy speak didn't sound convincing. It was like, okay, something's off here. The vibe doesn't feel right. And yet we kept him on for another year, and now we're paying the price for it. Because going into the Norway game a week ago, he's talking like, well, this is a real challenge. We're all very nervous. Well, it's like, fucking don't say that. I mean, that rubs off on the team. We have to be aware of what we're giving up here. While it's true that we're going to be making it harder for people to become, Italian citizens, and thereby, making the country feel a little more, I don't know, palatable, comfortable, culturally, right, with what it is that we know. We also have a guy named Giacomo, who's our striker, who's 5'7", weighs 150 pounds. We have to be okay with that also. Now, I'm okay to work with these guys. I'm okay to work with the Italian players we have. I don't think we need to try to cast a wider net to get, more kids into the country who are going to not be in, who are whatever, going to have parents that work 3 jobs and aren't going to have, a ton of time to put, into school maybe, right? Of their kids, schooling of their kid, right? Like if you're an immigrant and you just have to work 2-3 jobs, you're not going to be sitting down doing the homework of your kids. Your kids are going to kind of run rampant. They're going to be in the streets. They're going to play soccer. They're going to be better. So your national team gets better. You have better footballers. But you have to look at them and say, well, is this what I want in the country or not? Is this who I want to represent me? Is this who I want my custodians, to be? You got to be okay to say yes or no. Now, again, it's not a race thing at all. It is not a race thing. It is a cultural thing. And let me give you an example, right? So, first of all, when you see a group of any person, right? Any type of person, they're insufferable. So please stay with me here, okay? But when you see a group of a bunch of Indians being Indian with each other, you look at it typically and say, I don't know about that. Something feels a little, I don't know about that. Something, whatever, feels weird. Then you get them one-on-one and generally they're cool. But then when you look at them kind of as a group, for some reason, every culture kind of has their own way of operating and way of doing things, their own way of speaking, their own way of looking at you, their own way of communicating. Cultural nuance is a real thing. Every culture kind of operates a little bit differently. And when you see a group of Indians together, you might think, look at these fucking guys. You believe these fucking guys? They're not like me, whatever me is. Now, that's a brown group of people, okay? If you take people from the United Kingdom, if you get a bunch of chavs who just came out of a pub and you get them, into a group of 50, you're going to look at them and say, these guys are fucking animals. Look at them. They're wreaking havoc. I don't want them in my fucking, what are they doing here? They're not like me, They're not like my people. I like my people. My people, I can get along with. We have a lot in common. But these fucking animals coming in and just wrecking shit, drunk. You don't have a strong affinity for that type of thing either. When you get a bunch of Brits in a group, they can be a little uncomfortable. You ever see a group of Germans come off like a tour bus when you're, visiting, I don't know, you're visiting ruins in Greece and you just have a bunch of Germans in sandals with maps going, yeah. You're kind of revolted by them. They're not bad people. You get them one-on-one and they all love their kids and they all, you can have a drink with them and they're all cool. But you look at them and for some reason, naturally, you just kind of get disgusted when you look at any group of people. By the way, I do that with Italians also, okay? If I see people from Naples on the beach, on a European island somewhere, and I see a bunch of Neapolitans being loud, I think, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And yet it's endearing. They're giving me food, they're horny, they're trying to fuck. It's kind of nice, right? It's fun, but it's also like, God, read a book. Read a book. You guys are kind of annoying. Every group is annoying, including your own group. My own family sometimes. If it's all of us together, it's like, my God, individually talking to everyone one-on-one is great, but when you get all of us together, it's like, fuck, families drive each other crazy. When everyone gets together, people start arguing over bullshit. Who's getting this percentage of this late relative's home? it's a diplomatic incident. When you get groups of people together, we kind of all, tense up and say, it doesn't feel as good as talking about them, talking to them one-on-one. So I think naturally when we see groups, right, when we see a lot of, Moroccans in the streets of Italy, for some reason, even though they all individually probably just want their families to do fine, when you see groups of them together, something happens where they all kind of fucking groupthink. They all behave, kind of in accordance with their culture. They're all wearing the same outfit. For some reason, that does a little something to you where you say, well, this doesn't feel Italian. And I guess this is important because we're in Italy, right? Like if you went to Belgium, you wouldn't be like, well, why are these Moroccans not behaving, Italian? It only feels weird when it's within your respective country. And these people are, whatever. I don't know, just not really not really partaking in society along with, the other locals. So I guess what I'm saying is, look, it's not an issue of, look, I don't have a problem with Muslims, for example. I personally play football with a lot of them. I like them a lot. Now, they're fun. They make a lot of jokes that I kind of, tend to appreciate. And many of them are very stupid, much like my Italian people who I'm interviewing at the pool bar the other day. Very similar. Okay? The Islamic worldview, right, might affect the way you go about living your life to a limited degree. The European Christian kind of worldview might affect how you go about your life in a certain way as well, right? You kind of send your kids to church until they're about 13, 14, and then you really foist on them what you really believe about how, this is probably all a metaphor for something. That's the European way, right? How Catholic do you really want to be? It's, your cultural background and your religious background shapes kind of the way you operate and raise your kids. But we could still all get along. But the point is, when you grow up with a culture, this, by the way, is why I think a lot of the Italians at the pool bar would, if they were even aware that this vote was going on, have abstained or voted no, although abstaining would have been a more effective result, or, it would have been a more effective, tactic in order to achieve the result that they would have wanted, which is to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to become an Italian citizen, because in general, you should want it to be as difficult as possible to make anyone a citizen of your country, right? Unless you desperately need people. It's like, why make it easier? Make it challenging. Let them stay here for longer so they absorb more of the culture quicker and they don't use the country as a turnkey to achieve some kind of personal goal, right? Without really giving a shit about what that place is all about. But I think a reason why the people at the pool bar are concerned about these matters, despite having nothing to do with the country. Let's be clear. I mean, although they feel Italian, Italy itself has nothing to do with anything they do in their life and their interests, okay? Up in fucking Woodbridge, Ontario. It's not a factor, really. It's just a part of their identity that makes them feel good because they love their family and their family comes from this part of the world. So it just kind of, shapes who they think they are. It's their own version of, self-identity that kind of is affected by it. And so they tend to say, well, I would like it if that country could stay the way that I understand it to be. Now, look, when I say I don't have an issue with Muslims, that is true. I do not. I quite like a lot of them. But I also don't think they have an issue with a lot of Christians most of the time, right? I'm a Christian guy in a Muslim soccer team right now, okay? They're good guys, but, let's just say, look, they're a little more religious than me, and that's fine, Like, I still have my Catholic beliefs, right? I have a fucking cross tattoo. I wear the crucifix. But, it's more of a symbol of just, like, a way that I think I'm meant to live. I don't necessarily know that every fucking thing in the Bible is something that ought to be followed every day, all the time. I think it's just a framework of how you should try to be a not, horrible human being. But yeah, these are religious guys. And again, I'm like the only guy on the team that's, let's just say the other guys on my team aren't as excited about the new pope, okay? Let's just put it that way, okay? They're like basically all Muslim. I'm like, there's maybe like 2 other Christian guys on the team, okay? No one has an issue with anyone. However, I don't think that my Syrian teammates would be all that thrilled if a bunch of Irish drunk Catholics moved to Syria. I don't think Saudis would be all that thrilled if Irish drunk Catholics moved to Riyadh and started wreaking havoc and trying to lobby for, the end of prohibition in the country. The Saudis would say, fuck off. That's not how we operate. We're Muslim, and this is how we want to operate our society. This is how we choose to exist. So if you want to come here, just abstain from drinking, So if you want to come to Italy, you want to come to insert country, take 10 years to learn the rules, right? Take double the amount of time to learn the rules. By the way, people from other parts of Europe can already come into Italy, no problem. I mean, there's very flex. If you're an EU citizen of another country, you could just start working in Italy. That we don't need migrants from other parts of the world outside of Europe necessarily to prop up our labor force. And already, by the way, if a bunch of Spaniards came to Italy, we have a lot in common. Okay, but if the entire city of Milan got taken over by an 80% Spanish majority, I would say, what the fuck is going on here? What are we doing? They don't want Italians taking over Madrid or Barcelona either. It's nice to have a few in the country, and right, there's Italians in most countries in Europe, right? If you're an Italian in Madrid and you work in in the restaurant business, that enriches the place. Mixing of cultures is fun. It's nice. But you want at the core the culture to be, what you feel it ought to be, what it's meant to be, what it is what you would expect to be. And look, the price you pay on a footballing level, again, is you have a team of guys that look like you who, for better or worse, are your guys. You're stuck with them. Okay? So yeah, we don't have fucking Rafa Leao, who's like a monster playing for Portugal, whose parents I think migrated from, I don't know, Angola, Mozambique, Cabo Verde, I don't know, some Portuguese colony. It's a little different because those countries are kind of like basically, culturally half Portuguese anyway because they were actually good at colonizing where we were not, Be kind of cool to have Ethiopians playing for Italy who could run for days at fullback, right? But unfortunately, Mussolini led one of the worst, fucking foreign military, campaigns, really that was seen from any country in the 20th century. So we're stuck with the guys we have. We're stuck with Giacomo Raspadori, 5'7" from Reggio Emilia, who, by the way, I'm happy with. I like that he scored against Moldova, but I mean, what a mess. What a mess the Italian national team is right now. What a fucking mess it is. And I mean, here's what we gotta keep in mind here. All right, we've done 30 minutes of this pod and we haven't talked about football at all. And this is all kind of linked to football, by the way. All right, in a weird roundabout sense. This is all linked to football because the Italian national team is kind of, it's like the beacon of light that Italians everywhere kind of cling to and say, well, this is something that makes me feel connected to where we're from. Which is why it would be catastrophe, obviously, if we missed another World Cup. There's a good chance that happens again now. Norway smoked us 3-0 was that the most predictable collapse of the entire Spalletti era? There have been a couple of bad games. We didn't look good against Germany. We looked terrible in the Euro. Pretty much every game of the Euro. We looked awful. But I mean, this one was, you could see this one coming a mile away. So, by the way, thank God we got rid of Luciano Spalletti so we can call up 37-year-old Francesco Acerbi again. Well, so now that the coach is gone, we could get the 37-year-old back who refused the call-up, who was alleged to have said the M-word last year. Yeah, that's great. That's what we need right now, is that guy coming into the team. That's what we need, is him coming back in. If we had him marking Erling Haaland, it would have been a different story. I mean, what? You fucking kidding me, dude? Gonna get a 37-year-old guy back into the team now that Spalletti's gone. It was Spalletti or Acerbi. By the way, I think it's good that Spalletti's gone. The reasons for which he had to leave, not great. It would have been better if Spalletti got to stay on, even though I, like most people, would have still not liked him or found him to be the solution. But it's like, if the team's doing well, you can't fire the guy, even though you hate him. So it's like, yeah, we didn't do well, so we finally get to get rid of him. But now we're up Schitt's Creek, really up against it. Probably playing for second place in this group now. Going to have to go through a playoff again if we're being realistic here. It's going to be a long summer worrying about this now. But this is all the fault of Gabriele Gravina. So Gabriele Gravina, by the way, is the president of the Italian Football Federation because back in the 80s, he took over Castel di Sangro, a team that his wife's uncle, I think, was a key member in. They were in the second bottom tier of Italian football, and they went all the way up to Serie B over the course of like 16 seasons. And it was, a book was written about it, The Miracle of Castel di Sangro. But that's where he made his bones. I truly mean this. I know that's a very impressive feat. And it gave him a career in football administration. But that doesn't mean he's the most qualified figure to, bring Italian football into the new age because he ran an amateur football club in the 80s and 90s. And I think we're seeing it now. I mean, his decisions with the coaching thing were absolutely, what a horrible look. So Spalletti finds out he gets fired, announces it himself at the press conference, and then manages a game as a fired coach. Have you ever seen that in your life? Have you ever seen a guy who's fired manage a game knowing it's his last fucking match? After this game, we're done with you. I mean, what kind of vibe does that set for the Moldova game? I'll tell you what vibe it sets. One where you almost concede a goal to Moldova. First, were it not for VAR, you're down 1-0 to Moldova. All of a sudden, you're playing up against it. Just trying to get 3 points, let alone, try to rack up goals to, pump the goal difference back up, which has been absolutely, destroyed in the first qualifier against Norway after a 3-0 loss. It's not a good state of affairs, okay? When you have a coach coming out, having been fired by the president's nowhere to be seen, sends him to the Wolves like a fucking coward while he was at some seriea fucking end-of-year festival, at some like buffet dining. And sends the guy to announce his own firing, doesn't show face, doesn't make the announcement himself, and lets the guy go coach a team who now know, well, we're never going to see this guy again. And it was almost a disaster. The Moldova game wasn't great either, to be clear. But I mean, just fumbling the bag to the extent that Gravina has with the Ancelotti thing is monumental. It could be one of the greatest what ifs in Italian football history, truly, if Carlo Ancelotti never manages Italy. He's managing Brazil now, but a year ago we heard that he was maybe going to do that. And that was bad news. But it was never officially announced. It was maybe a thing that was kind of being talked about behind the scenes, clearly. But we could have still swooped in and told Ancelotti, listen, we want to be rid of Spalletti. Why don't you take a step down and enter semi-retirement and manage national team football and coach your country, coach Italy. And we passed up that opportunity, which is insane. A year ago, Antonio Conte was available. The only thing that these kids need now is Antonio Conte trench warfare. That is what we need right now. That's what we need to qualify for the World Cup. I feel like if we get Antonio Conte trench warfare, we're in. Because anyone he's getting into the team is going to buy into his system. He's only getting guys into the team who can buy into his system. That's the fact of the matter is whoever plays under Antonio Conte buys into the system, and if they don't, they're dead. They're shot. They're executed on the spot. Luciano Spalletti doesn't do that. He says, go, I'm giving you a chance, be strong. And I'm putting you in my system, which tactically makes no sense. A 3-back against Norway, right? When you have like a lack of center backs, doesn't make any fucking sense. You play the 4-back and you tighten up. Instead of putting a guy named Diego, who's like 22 years old, into the middle of a defensive back three against the best striker in the world for, his first ever appearance. You're going to see Italy at the Euro, which is starting today at the U21 Euro. It's not going to do bad. Bio Esposito's injured. He's actually maybe the best forward that we have that's, kind of in that category that, honest to God, if he winds up playing, in Serie A next year, you could almost see him, making a World Cup team if we're, lucky enough to fucking get it, get to that point as things stand. But yeah, you'll see. We don't have a bad We don't have a bad core of young players. They're decent. They're nowhere near the level of. I mean, if you watch the Nations League final the other day, I mean, between Spain and Portugal, you say, well, fuck, how far off this level are we? Quite far off, clearly. But with the right coaching, you could achieve great things, particularly when you have relatively competent skills, right? You're playing in a high-level league like Serie. You're able to make things happen. You could beat a better team like Spain, who technically are, probably going to hold the ball more. We saw it last year in the Euro. They were a much better team than us, but the game was tight. I think we only lost by 1 or 2 goals. Might have been 1 goal. Did we only lose 1-0? I don't remember. But, so we got run rampant around, but we're kind of there. We're kind of still with it. We're not completely desolate. We could compete in any given game if set up correctly. So it's being rumored now, it's been rumored for a couple of days that Claudio Ranieri would take over, which that's not a good state of affairs. You don't want to bring in the old guy, okay, to deal with the kids. There's a world where it works, where he has proven to be effective and he has experience, which is nice. I mean, that's a platitude, but experience and calm and, a track record of having won and made his players like him is kind of valuable in this case, where Spalletti was not able to do that. I think a lot of players probably found Spalletti to be a little weird. He's a weirdo. He is. Where, Ranieri's probably a little more of a sympathetic figure. Easier to digest. But still, you're like, fuck, is he the best guy we have available for the job when it's this dire a situation? Because, again, you have to remember that now the whole point of hiring a new coach is he has to turn things around. Right? He has to turn things around and be the first guy to bring us back to a World Cup in 12 years. 16 years. 14? No, 12 years. Yeah. Fucking 12 years. Jesus Christ. So that's a tall task. It's not, all right, coach went to a major tournament, decided to resign when we're done, and now we're starting a new cycle where we're just going to, give a new coach a lot of time. No, it's now. It's now. It's the next year, frantic. What can you do? So that would have been a lot of pressure on Claudio Ranieri, and he has gotten results before. He might have been an interesting selector, but he said no, probably because he knows the job is, career suicide. Now we're being rumored to be going for Gennaro Gattuso. Now, people are going to love that. People are going to love that. Just optically, they're going to say, yeah, I'm happy he's on the bench. And by the way, there is a world where, him and Buffon and so on, on the bench it bodes well, right? Because the way everyone now thinks is, well, it's been 20 years since we won the World Cup. Those guys are old enough now that we could start. They're young enough that they know how football's played nowadays, but they're old enough, right? They're not just, they're not these fucking fresh faces that are still in their 30s. They're a little older, and they're able to kind of, bestow, know-how onto young kids who would have watched them play and, command respect because of it. That's true. That would be a nice fairy tale, right? If you can get a lot of the core of that team to be part of the rebuild going forward and get us back to a World Cup. I mean, that would be fantastic. But how great a coach, Gennaro Gattuso is, I don't know. Now, I almost would probably rather have him than Spalletti. I don't actually, now that I'm thinking about it, although I'm worried about it, I don't know if I hate it. Because he's going to yell at them. That's what they need to be. Honestly, you just need to be yelled at. It's international football. You can't be bombarded with, too much information. He has coached at club level, but he probably is a guy who you could actually see maybe doing well at international level just because he doesn't have to be as involved with, the tactical side with the players. He just has to foster a good group. He has a sense of humor. I think he's a little more pleasant to be around than, Spalletti. I think when he yells at them, it'll be a little more... I think it might fire them up a little more and not freak them out. I feel like when Spalletti yells at players, you could just imagine it being a little overwhelming to the point where you're like, well, I don't know what he wants. He's like, you have to do what I'm saying to do. You have to be strong. It's like, okay, but that's not really helpful. I feel like Spalletti's probably coming into a changing room after a poor showing, right, at halftime saying, be strong, pull up, your bootstraps and go out there, have a little pride and stick to the system and yada, yada. I feel like Gattuso's he's threatening to kill them. He's threatening to kill them and talking about, he's talking about it in a way where it's a little more, It's just the rasp in the voice, really. They could almost be saying the same thing, but it's more effective, I feel like, coming from Gennaro Gattuso because people are scared of him anyway. No one is scared of Luciano Spalletti. People find him to be a weird guy, and he is a weird guy. He's a weird guy that looks like Mussolini. So he had the potential to, if he had a deep voice, it would have actually worked very well. He has the Mussoliniano kind of look about him, where if he had been able to project, it would have been great. But he talks like a mouse. So people find him to be very weird. But Gattuso getting angry, I mean, everyone knows Gattuso gets angry, right? So it just does something to you because there's more lore around it. I really do think that makes a big difference. So I've been brought this plate of salumi here because I will. This is my torso. The lighting's not great here, but I just want to show this off here because this is the skinniest I'm going to look for the rest of my life now until we qualify for a World Cup. This is as good as it looks now, okay? It's only downhill from here because every day now until we qualify for a World Cup, I'm going to eat soppressat in honor of Gennaro Gattuso, the Calabrian Cosentino, soon to be Italian national team coach. This is the best you will ever see me look ever again because from this day forward, it's soppressat and crotonese until we qualify for a World Cup. Okay? That's the MO. That's the MO going forward is we're eating this stuff every day until we qualify for a World Cup. As I get increasingly bloated and just fucking my ankles swell, okay? Like a Calabrian uncle in August. That's going to be me going forward. Long live the Republic. Long live the Republic. I did not vote in the referendum because I wish not to become like other European countries. I wish to remain uniquely Italian and discriminatory to any and all migrant until they show that they can have a conversation in Italian. Which years ago, you'll recall, fucked over Luis Suarez when he tried to apply for Italian citizenship to get an EU slot when trying to sign for Juve. Those are the rules. Those are the rules, okay? Because you see, what it comes down to is this. Right? We're insufferable, and Italians are very, very easy to get disgusted by. I mean, truly. If you watch Italian television, you say, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is these people put looks and appearance so far ahead of just level of education and such. Broadly, that's a major issue among a lot of, among many cohorts of Italians. That's a real issue. But we're our own problem. We are our own problem in our own fucking little state. Leave us be. Let us be our own little fucking problem and deal with each other interregionally. We have fucking issues as is. Let us handle our, shit in house. We don't need to import fucking issues from elsewhere. I think that's sort of the point here. Just like people in Russia don't want. I honest to God, I think in Russia, if too many Ukrainians came into Russia, Russians would be like, well, what's going on here? We're not like them. It's just a normal thing. This is the country. We have our own little identity, and we're part of it, and we value it. It's our piece of the world, and we want to go about living our own way. Now, if you don't like the part of the world that you come from, you could leave it. You're entitled to leave it. But we make it harder for you to become a citizen because it should require a lot of, you're reinventing who you are, basically. If you migrate to a country, in 5 years, you're not a new person. In 10 years, you're closer to a new person than you were at 5 years. You're twice the newer person than you were. I think I'm allowed to feel this way. I really do. I think that it's okay to say, I want this country to look like me, feel like me, and have the same religion as me, even though I reject the religion and its principles in most aspects of my life. In most facets of my life, I choose to negate the religious teachings because that's part of the culture. That's what the culture is. And yes, other countries in Europe do the same thing, but they do it in their own language and we do it in ours. And there's a little bit of cultural linguistic nuance that comes from it, you see. So, by the way, I don't think people that visit Italy would like it if Italy felt less Italian. I mean, people kind of like the stereotypical, image of what an Italian person is. They want to go to a town and feel that, and only that. And when they don't, they say, well, this is a little weird. This is a little odd. So again, I don't know, saying we should be like other European countries. I mean, like the case studies don't really compel you to want to become like a lot of these areas that have entire communities that are completely desolate. These migrant communities, like in France, you have these apartment blocks. By the way, this exists in Italy also. But you have these apartment blocks that are entirely inhabited by immigrants that have issues. Because it's hard to integrate into a new fucking country. So it's like you don't just give these people the paperwork. They got to do the fucking work. They have to do the work and stick it out. They have to stick it out and really only get to fully participate in the civic process once they have become sufficiently disillusioned. Once they have become sufficiently disillusioned with Italy. You could only become an Italian citizen when you hate Italy. That's how it works. If you're still in the country and you say, well, this is great. There's Italian women everywhere. Look at this. I want to fuck them all. This is the land of opportunity. Whatever. You shouldn't become Italian yet. You have to be disgusted by Italians. When you're in Italy long enough that you say, these people are fucking disgusting and I hate it here and there's no opportunity and also Mussolini was kind of a good guy. Like if you say shit like that, like stuff that, by the way, if you're one of those guys that thinks that we need a Mussolini back, well, it is true that there is an element of, safety that you get from fascism. You can't have that. It's not healthy for a democracy. You can't just have a guy take over a country. But if you start to kind of really, almost believe these poisonous ideas, let's call them poisonous ideas, that we need a strong leader who, stays around for as long as possible and, fuck the democratic process. Now you're starting to get it. Now you're an Italian. Now you're good. Has nothing to do with anything else. You just have to absorb the culture. You have to absorb the culture and you have to, I think 10 years of basically a couple cycles of not qualifying for a World Cup. If you're in Italy that whole period of time and you're seeing what it does to the country, that's good. That's very positive. You have to be in the country for 2.5 tournament cycles. Maybe see us win a tournament like you saw a couple years ago. Just see us not qualify for the World Cup. Understand the nuance of of this town versus that town. You have to kind of have to adopt, culinary preferences. Like whatever. I'm in Modena right now, and this is the best type of fucking pesto. Not like those animals over in Ancona. You need to absorb those ideas before you could become a full-fledged citizen. These are all very important things that you must take in stride if you're to become part of the Republic. Now, going forward, it's probably going to be Gattuso. It is what it is. Antonio Conte would be the best choice. Carlo Ancelotti would have been a great choice also. Because at least at that point, you're getting a guy who has such a, aura around them from their track record that the players are automatically going to command respect for them. They have a good communicational style, both of them. And I think they're both good at getting what they want. Spalletti traditionally has often not gotten what he wants out of teams. He just won a Scudetto with Napoli that had the best striker and the best winger in the country. So yeah, I'm diminishing his accomplishments 100%. That's why I think he resigned, because he knew he couldn't repeat it. But it's a godsend that Spalletti's gone. But the problem is that, he was probably not even the best guy to hire in the first place. You could argue that Spalletti was probably not the best man to hire in the first place by Gabriele Gravina, but moreover, Gravina couldn't restart last year. He couldn't bring himself to do it, and that was a fucking mistake. So he's made monumental errors over the course of his tenure. He's failed to qualify for a World Cup and maybe a second one now. He had a huge falling out with Roberto Mancini, who at the time was doing fine. Let's be clear. He hadn't qualified for the 2022 World Cup, which was crazy, but things still felt like they could and would turn. The players still trusted him, and he had a good, I think, muscle to turn over the right guys. We lost him. We lost him because he fell out with Gravina, and Mancini came out and basically said that he didn't like the way Gravina was managing the national team's affairs. And frankly, by the way, he got reelected, I think, to the tune of like 98 or 99% of the votership back in February. He got reelected Fiji president. So people there love him. I mean, whatever he's doing, whoever votes on that issue, I think it's like club owners and such. The clubs are all very happy with what he's doing for them somehow, for some reason. My main concern, right, is less to do with the actual Italian Football Federation and just the national team, because the fact is, I mean, he winds up being kind of the technical director of the national team. This guy who was just an administrator at clubs and of the Serie C league until he, I think, eventually became the president of the Italian Football Federation. He's not a guy that really was ever involved with. Well, I guess you know, maybe when he was running that Castel di Sangro club, he was maybe involved with picking coaches and stuff, but he's clearly not well suited to managing the personnel of the national team. He's not. He's made bad decisions, and he's not even, I mean, the way he fired Spalletti was not well handled. It almost put us in a bad spot against Moldova. Let's be clear. The way that Gravina went about it, having Spalletti announce his own firing, could have had far worse effects against Moldova. Again, it was still not a great game. We at least got a couple points out of it, but it was almost a catastrophe. And going into it, it felt like, Jesus, what are these players thinking right now? What are they thinking? How are they feeling playing for this guy, listening to this guy's instructions? He was still playing them in a 3-back. He was insistent till the end, Spalletti was, on playing his own way. And, you know, that was one of his issues. Another issue is, by the way, that he sees betrayal at every corner. Behind every corner, behind every door, betrayal, act of betrayal. He sees conspiracy in weird ways. He thinks people are out to get him. He thinks that players not buying into the system betray his ideas. It's like, dude, you're not good at getting people to buy into your system. It's not because the players are weak. It's because you're a poor man manager. So, God bless. God bless his departure. And listen, what do you want me to do? Yell about the Norway game from a week ago? We're in a shit spot right now. Everyone saw it coming. We finally, hit the last straw. And we got rid of the guy who was on the bench who was not doing a good job. The president's not going anywhere. He's a malignant presence who will not go anywhere. He was just reelected and he will not step down. I don't even know how you could fire the president of the Italian Football Federation. I don't know who votes on that. I think it's just the next time he's up for election, we have to not vote him through. And the clubs keep voting him through because they're happy with how he's distributing the money, I guess, within the organization. I don't even know why or how they're voting for him at such a high clip. Because he hasn't had a good, as far as I'm concerned, the big thing for me is he has had a very bad track record managing the Italian national team. So that's my main concern. That's the main thing that really freaks me out. I don't like the fact that he wasn't able to convince Claudio Ranieri. The fact that Claudio Ranieri didn't want to work for him is a bad omen to me. And I think Gennaro Gattuso, mark my words, there's a real possibility that Gennaro Gattuso doesn't qualify for the World Cup and goes nuclear and just goes to war with Gravina. I think even if we qualify for the World Cup, I think Gravina and Gattuso will not have a great working relationship, is what I suspect. Now, I think Gattuso's going to say what he's got to say to get the job, but I think eventually he's going to hate working under him. That's what I think. because Gattuso has, not taken bullshit before, and other people have raised issue with Gravina and the way that he goes about managing things. Now, again, the fact that Spalletti was willing to stay on is crazy. That's how delusional he was. Spalletti said if he were not fired, he would have stayed on because he wanted to finish the job. That's a problem of his. I mean, after the Euro, he should have resigned, and he didn't because he thought, no, I want to turn this around. Now, that's ego. That's legacy, concern with legacy and so on. That's a fucking issue. So, better to be rid of him, 100%. Oh, yes, there were injuries and such in the last game, but he didn't do a good job of managing the players that we had. You have to adapt based on the players that you have available to you. And I don't think that under a guy like Gennaro Gattuso, who, honest to God, I think is going to keep things simpler, things will be worse off. I think things will be better off. The problem is we're starting in a real hole right now with a real deficit. And we're going to have to do it with the guys we have. We're not going to be able to do it with a guy from Guinea-Bissau, okay? We're not going to be able to do it with some Venezuelan guy. It's the guys we got. It's the guys we got that have citizenship, which we make it very hard to obtain. But by God, it makes the people at Cabana Pool Bar in Toronto happy. So, fuck it, I guess. Episodes are back 2 weekly. I will see you soon. Thank you for tuning into this broadcast. Salumi every day until we qualify for a World Cup. That's me being optimistic. I don't want to eat salumi every day until 2030. I'd really rather not. But it could be a fun little shtick. Could be a fun little shtick. We don't qualify for a World Cup. Fuck it. I get to eat, I get to eat sopressata every day for the next 5 years. Gonna fucking run out at some point in my own family stash, and we're gonna have to start slaughtering pigs and doing it on a semi-industrial level. But I mean, as my Muslim teammates say, mashallah, hopefully, or whatever the opposite of that is. God forbid. As they say in Brooklyn, God forbid we don't qualify for another World Cup. I think it's good that Spalletti's gone. I think Gattuso is going to be a good option. He's Calabrese. I'm Calabrese too, bro. Fam, this guy's Calabrese. This guy's angry. Look at him. I love it. He's angry. I'm not even kidding. It would actually be better. It's actually probably better for the diaspora abroad that the coach be Gennaro Gattuso. This fucking Calabrese guy instead of this philosopher Luciano Spalletti. This Tuscan weirdo. Yeah, good riddance. We'll have to circle back in a couple months. A couple months will be when we decide whether it's a state of emergency or not. But really, I mean, it's all going to come down to the last game against Norway, which is in November. If Norway loses one game or ties one game, we're back. We just have to win every other fucking game on the docket and then hope that it comes down to the last one. But it's not going to be easy, man. We put ourselves in a real tough spot, and make no mistake, even if we qualify, it'll be in spite of, the management of Gabriele Gravina. But by God, it'll be with 5'7" guys named Giacomo that look like your grandfather. So that's worth something. Alla prossima. Ciao.